Hey guys, it's Scott with Scotty B Cards. In this video, I want to talk about the MLB All-Star Game and discuss which players are the best investments. The way I'm going to be talking about these investments is I have this tier list here, and I'm going to rank them from D all the way to the S tier to discuss which ones I think are the best long-term investment. My goal is to look long-term, 5 to 10 years from now, which ones will have the most value. All of these can be really good short-term flips in one way or another. People have made money on every single one of these players in some capacity, but I'm looking at long-term. Just know there will be some players that we disagree on. That is okay. Let me know down in the comments below which one we disagree on. It'll be fun to discuss that with you guys. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to do this with the AL position and then the NL position. Some of these players have been replaced on the All-Star lineup, but I'm going to keep doing the actual selected starters just because it makes it more consistent on who we think is the best for that position this year. Okay, so at catcher, we have Salvador Perez for the American League. Salvador Perez is probably the fourth best catcher of this generation behind Buster Posey, Joe Mauer, and Yadier Molina in my eyes. He's been a great player for the Royals, took him to 2 World Series. They won one of those World Series. And the good thing about Salvador Perez, you can see he's been Mr. Consistency. He's been basically a MLB average catcher or MLB average hitter his whole career, but he has some seasons where he's a lot higher. This year he's an 803 OPS. He's a 7-time All-Star. Good looking player, but I still think he's probably a C+ investment just because catchers long-term usually don't hold a ton of value. I don't think he'll make the Hall of Fame, but he's still a good investment in some capacity because he is a fan favorite in Kansas City, which I think will hold his cards up. After that, we have the NL catcher. That's Buster Posey. Buster Posey is probably a little bit better investment in some ways because he's probably on a Hall of Fame path. 43.7 WAR isn't super high, but the modern catcher, we always look at Yadier Molina as like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Everybody says that all the time on broadcast. I don't know why, but everybody does. So if that is the case, that means Buster Posey is definitely a Hall of Famer. But regardless, right now he's had a really good peak, and then he had a lot of down years where he kind of went worse and worse and worse to the point he was playing first base a lot of the time in 2019. But regardless, he had 2020 off because he just adopted 2 kids, I believe. He adopted either 1 or 2 kids so that he didn't want to get them sick. And then he came back, his legs were fresh, he's playing great. He's just on the IL now, but regardless, MVP, he's a 2-time World Series champion, a hero in San Francisco, so I think he is a good investment. I have him as a B or B+ investment. I'll put him just as B right now because some of the people I have as B+ I think are slightly better investments, but we'll put him as a B currently. After that, we have first base. We have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is having one of the best years in all of baseball. We can see his numbers, 1.118 OPS, 202 OPS plus. I think Mike Trout's best OPS plus season was like 196 or 197. Bryce Harper's best is like 198, I believe. So regardless, he's having a great year halfway to this point. He could win the home run title, but Otani is just looking good. It's unfortunate they're having such good years at the same time because one of them can't win MVP. But I would put Vlad as an A right now. Before this season started, I had him probably as a B, maybe even a B- in some ways because he was so slow to getting to where he's at now. But he's looking so good. He lost some weight, and he's only 22. I think we forget how young he is, even though he debuted 3 years ago. He's only 22. So I think because of the youth, the high ceiling, which we're seeing, and I think the relatively high floor, which we've seen in the past, I think that was his floor. I think he's a good investment. So that is the starter at first base for the AL team. For the NL team, we have Freddie Freeman. There's a big debate if Freddie Freeman or Maxmuncie deserved the starting position. I'm not going to say my opinion, just because it's tough. There's pros and cons to both players. But regardless, right now, Freddie Freeman I have as a B+ investment just because I think he's on a Hall of Fame path. He is 31, so he's getting older, and this is a down season for him. He's got his batting average much higher than where it was. I think a few weeks ago it was like at 230. So good for Freddie Freeman. He's a good player. His defense hasn't always been the best. He has won a Gold Glove, but I hope that holds up. If it wasn't for his defense, if he could have been closer to 0, he'd be an extra 0.8 WAR higher, right around that 2 mark instead of 1.2 mark. But regardless, Freddie Freeman is a good player. I think he does get there, and because of that, I think he's a B+. Now we have second base in the American League, and for second base, we have Marcus Semien. Marcus Semien I have as a C tier player. He had a late peak to his career. He was a very okay player probably until this season in 2019 where he became, top 3 MVP candidate. This year he'll probably be a top 5 to top 10 MVP candidate the way he's playing with the Blue Jays. Probably, 4.4 is pretty close to what Vlad has as a WAR total, just because Semien is a great defender. But regardless, Semien I have as a C just because he's never going to be a player people really look after. The A's as a whole, people usually collect A's cards cards for the modern players. But on top of that, he went to the Blue Jays, and he's good, but he'll never be viewed as a Hall of Famer. In my opinion, he could get there, and I hope I'm wrong, but I bet you he's probably more of a C-tier investment right now because I don't think long-term it's a great value. In the NL, we have another player that I wouldn't say is a fantastic investment, but that's Adam Frazier. Adam Frazier, I also has a C. He debuted really late. He's 29 years old and is having his best year right now. Before that, he was a good player, nothing special. I'm sure Pirates fans loved him. This year he's playing even better, and that could be where he's going to sit. But regardless if he has 5 WAR for the next, 3 or 4 years of his prime, he's still not going to make the Hall of Fame. He's still going to be just a kind of like a Pirate on a really bad Pirates team in the really bad generation for Pirates fans. So I have him at that C tier. At third base, we have Raphael DeVries. Raphael DeVries is having a monster year after a really good year 2 years ago and then a little bit slower season last year. He's proving that his 2019 was not a fluke, which is great. He's having actually a good defensive season, which I love to see because that's something he's vastly improved. That's almost a full 1-win switch halfway through this season, being up to 1 win, and he's at 6 win offensively as a 7 WAR player. So I still have him as a B tier just because he is 24, but he's starting to hit his prime a little bit late. Like he was good, but he's getting really good just a little bit late compared to Tatis and Acuna and all those players. I do think he has the potential to get to a B+ or an A. In the National League, we have Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado, no question, has been a player I've watched my entire fandom. So I might be slightly biased, but I think he's an A-tier player. We can look at his stats right now. He has 2.9 WAR this year, which he's actually not played that great if you look at his defensive and offensive stats, but he's still a 131 OPS plus. That's above his average career, and actually it's his 3rd best offensive year if we look at his numbers, but just barely, right on line with his last average of the last 4 or 5 years. Regardless, still a great player with the Cardinals. It's funny how the Cardinals are kind of struggling. We all thought the Cardinals would be a runaway winner of that division, but I still think he's an A-tier investment, probably going to be a Hall of Famer. He's won 8 Gold Gloves. He's won 4 Silver Sluggers, 4 Platinum Gloves. This is his 6th All-Star appearance. Regardless, Arenado is a good investment in my eyes. All right, so after third base, we're going to be looking at shortstops. In the American League, we have Xander Bogaerts. Xander Bogaerts, currently, I have as a B-tier investment up there with Raphael DeVries. I think he easily could be a B+. He's starting to prove that he's awesome, plus he's from Aruba, which is sweet when you think about it. But he really picked it up in 2018. He was overshadowed by Mookie Betts' MVP year, but he was a huge part of that team that won the World Series, and he's been a stud ever since. He's just performed well and better almost every single year. He's probably not going to make the Hall of Fame with his current WAR trajectory unless he has a really good age 30 to 35, and I think it is possible. And I hope that's possible for Red Sox fans because he really is a great ball player. For the National League, we have Fernando Tatis Jr., and I think Fernando Tatis Jr. is safely in the A tier. I have been relatively critical of Tatis on this channel because of his injury past, but he's starting to prove that he's able to stay in the field longer. He's only played 214 games in the big leagues. He's at a 4.8 WAR right now. 12 WAR in basically 214 games is crazy. So I would say he's in the A tier. He's basically the face of baseball up there with Shohei Otani right now. I think he's an excellent investment to look at. So now we're to the outfield. I'm going to do all the American League outfielders, and I'll do all the National League outfielders. Right now we have Mike Trout in the American League center field. I think Mike Trout is an S-tier player, probably one of the only 1 or 2 S-tier players in Major League Baseball where they're just that good. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's only 28 or 29 years old right now, and he's only getting better. The problem with Trout is injuries. Ken Griffey Jr. had this really good career arc, and then he got hurt, and then he kind of declined. Let's hope that doesn't happen to Trout. I hope he can stay on the field because at the beginning of this year, he was killing it. But I think he's in the S tier. Not much more to say about Trout. Great ball player. After that, we have Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is actually putting up probably his 2nd or 3rd best year of his career. I have Aaron Judge in the B tier because he debuted at age 24, which is pretty old, and he's had so many injuries. This year, he's actually played almost every game for the Yankees, which is great. So I think Aaron Judge is a B tier, but he could get higher if he can have a good age 30 to 35, but I just don't really see it happening with his injury history. It's crazy. He's 6'7", 282 pounds. I don't know if that actually matters or not. People say the same thing about Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is smaller, so they say he can't stay on the field. So it's just, he's a baseball player. I think he'll be fine, but we'll see. And then to round up the outfield for the American League, we have Teoscar Hernandez, who I probably view as one of the worst players on this tier, on this actual All-Star team. Unfortunately, he's a great player. He's having a decent year. I would say there's probably other outfielders who could have deserved this spot more than him, but it's okay. I have him as a D tier. I don't think he's an F, but he's probably a D tier. He's 5.6 career WAR at age 28. So nothing too crazy. He's having a good year, 122 OPS plus. That's fine, but I wouldn't say he deserves the All-Star game more than other players, but that's okay. In the National League, we have in center field Ronald Acuna Jr., who I think is an A-tier player. Acuna is solid. He is proving it more and more what his ceiling is, and his ceiling is very high. Tatis' ceiling may be slightly higher, but Acuna is still really good. I have him as an A-tier just because if you look at his stats, you know, he has 24 homers, 16 stolen bases. He's having a good offensive year at 985 OPS with his career high of 155 OPS plus. If he continues that trend, he'll just get better and better. He's only 23. Just remember that. Only 23 years old. In the National League outfield, we also have Nick Castellanos, who I view as probably one of the not so great investments. He's probably a C-tier player. Not really a fan favorite. He's fine. Cincinnati fans may like him, but you know, he's played in Detroit. He's played in Chicago for that half season when he got traded, and then he went to Cincinnati. And he's been a productive major league player throughout his career, but he's never been anything that great until the last probably year or two. But I would say overall, C-tier player, a lot of fire. Really, you know, a lot of people hate him, but I think it's fun to see some baseball players have some fun. So I would still leave him that C-tier for investment purposes for 5 to 10 years from now. To round out the outfield for the National League, we have Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker is a good ball player, but same thing as Teoscar Hernandez, debuted a little bit late, 4.3 career WAR, probably a D-tier investment, probably not somebody you want to put a ton of money into, but still a good ball player and could be a fan favorite where you collect some of his cards. Now we have the DH for the American League. We don't know the exact DH for the National League. I think they actually announced it was Maxmuncie. If Maxmuncie was on here, I'd probably give him, I'm not going to put him on like fully, but wild card. Maxmuncie, I'd probably have him as, you know, a C-plus tier player. I don't think he's that great of an investment, but he is a Dodger and he's won a World Series, so who knows. But anyway, Shohei Otani. Shohei Otani, man, he is the toughest player to rank on this list. He's 26, so he's a little bit older, having his best year at age 26, which is old. But on top of that, he's had 5.6 WAR in one freaking half of an MLB season. That's crazy. On top of that, he just hit his 32nd home run tonight, and he is a good pitcher. He had 1 or 2 bad starts, which made his ERA go to like 3.5 when it should be closer to 3. But regardless, I have a hard time putting him in the A tier because of his injury history. He, before this year, was not on the field a ton. He's being super consistent now. So if he continues this, he has A tier, even maybe S tier potential if he can play healthily for the next 10 years. But on the other side of that coin, he has been hurt quite a bit. And because he's doing double duty, he could get hurt probably more than the average player. So for that reason, I have him at B+. I think he could be A. We maybe put him on the line between B+ and A. Don't hate me for that. But, you know, a lot of recency bias will say he should be an S tier. But if we look back, it's tough. Look at future projections, it's tough. So I have him as an A or B+, right there in the middle. Plus, he's the starting pitcher for probably the American League. So there's 2 people, and there's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And now we go to the National League starting pitcher. We have Jacob DeGrom. Jacob DeGrom has proved himself as an excellent pitcher for the last 4 years or so. Before the last 5 or 4 years, he was a good pitcher, and he's now an elite pitcher. I think he is an A-tier investment. One of the few A-tier pitchers in all of baseball, in my opinion. If I was going to put any money in a pitcher, he would be one of the top 2 or 3 I'd put the money into. Maybe Clayton Kershaw, maybe Max Scherzer, but Jacob DeGrom is solid. Great thing about DeGrom, he has very few rookie cards, and even though those rookie cards are all basically short printed. So good guy to look at because his cards, if he does get better, wins another Cy Young, wins an MVP, I don't think he will because he's had, you know, he's a 1.08 ERA now, which is such a disappointment. Just kidding. But regardless, I think he's a good player. So anyways, that is my last player on this list. Thank you for watching. Let me know down in the comments below if you disagree with any of these picks, who you would change, and what you think. Thank you for watching the channel. Please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you for subscribing if you're already a subscriber. I appreciate it. We just hit 4,000 subs, which is fantastic. It's grown quick, and I've really enjoyed making this content. Other than that, like the video and enjoy the All-Star game, and I'll catch you later. See ya.